Hello, everybody. This is Carol Maletta. Welcome to the Parenting 411 podcast, where we share information parents need from sources they can trust. Of all the accomplishments we might claim as parents, providing a safe, warm home, keeping our children healthy, or having children who even like us, achieving balance is something that often eludes parents that I encounter. There's always so much going on, so many new approaches and ideas to parenting to consider and try out. And once you think you're moving at a good pace and your children are where they need to be, you find out you're still behind because the finish line is always moving. Today's guest, Dr. Laura Froyen, can help with that. She is the mother of two, whom she shares with a partner she calls, and I quote, a kind, loving, intelligent, and hilarious man. She has used her expertise in human development and family studies as a couples and family therapist, a professor, and today as a consultant and guide for parents. But you know what? I'm going to let her tell you more about all of that. So welcome, Dr. Laura Froyen.
Hi, Carol. Thanks so much for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, as I promised, you were going to tell them all about yourself. So, I know you got your start as a couples and family therapist. So, how did you begin working with parents on the act of parenting?
My PhD, I had kind of a dual PhD experience where I was researching how marital and family processes influence child development. My dissertation looked at how marital conflict and satisfaction influence the home learning environment that parents create and then children's academic outcomes. After grad school, I got a job as a professor where I wasn't practicing couple and family therapy anymore. And about a year into this professorship, I realized I was really missing working directly with families. I also had some personal circumstances come up that made my role as a professor really, really challenging. And I got to a point where I had to choose between my physical health, my role as a parent, a mother, and as a wife, and my role as an academic. When it comes to your physical life, your well-being, and your family's well-being, those were my top priorities. And so the other one had to go. So I quit my job and I found a way to support and work directly with families that was more fulfilling for me and allowed me to have a better balance so that I wasn't coming home so physically exhausted that I couldn't be with my family anymore. That's it in a nutshell. I love working with families. I love meeting them in some of their darkest times, holding their hand and walking alongside them and helping them find the wealth and the well of wisdom that's inside them and has been there all along. I don't know about you, but for me as a parent, it is really difficult to quiet the cultural and societal influences and voices. There's so much pressure on us. But when I do, and I start listening to myself, to my true intuition, not my cultural conditioning, it's so much easier to live a life that is purposeful and meaningful, and one that is purposeful and meaningful for my kids too. So I feel like that was a little bit winding, but how I got where I am.
I actually love that so much because I would say that that's where I was at the beginning of my journey. I had these twin sons, and
Couldn't
of
we just
course
have
they
a
were,
moment of compassion for how old are they now? How old are your twins now?
they are 22,
Ooh, can we
just graduated from college.
yeah, can we think back, 20 years ago to sweet Carol with two twins, 2 year olds at home and just send her some compassion? Whew, what a life, huh?
Yes, it really was challenging and exciting and exhilarating once I got my hands around it. But on that road, I got lots of advice, uh, most often unsolicited, And the best advice came from people who didn't even have children about what I needed to do with them. And so my journey really was about me trying to get centered with my husband to figure out our path, how we wanted to do this. And, consider good advice and incorporate it as it's going to work for our family, but to not be governed by it. So our journeys feel so similar.
I love that. All of the research on parenting and child outcomes really comes down to two things: parenting imperfectly in a way that's good enough, right? That's what all the research shows is that it has the best outcome for kids. And the other thing that's 100% like most impactful on your parenting in your child's development is something called parental efficacy, self-efficacy. And so when you feel like you know what you're doing, when you feel like you're confident in yourself and that what you're doing is effective, even if what you're doing looks different than the person down the street, you have good outcomes for your kids. So I love that
Right.
journey for you. That was awesome. And I hope that we, all the folks that we help in our podcast can find their way there to that place of inner confidence.
I do too. Now, in your practice, how have your parents' worries and concerns changed since the pandemic?
Yeah. Especially I work with a lot of moms. I don't know about you, but my practice is probably 95% moms. And I think that moms and women have borne the brunt of this pandemic. When the kids came home from school, it was us who learned how to work in the wee hours of the morning, so that we could school our kids. It's been a lot. And it's been even harder to find balance. It's been even harder to prioritize self-care. And what I'm seeing right now as we are coming out of our second year in this, is that moms are really burnt out, that they've been putting themselves on the back burner for a long time, out of necessity, really, because there wasn't a lot of other options for them. And now they're starting to figure out, how can we move forward in a way that's balanced? The other thing that I'm hearing a lot in my community is, as the world is opening up and as we're moving into going back into activities, parents are missing the downtime that they had with their family over these past 2 years. And they're starting to feel the pressure to get their kids back into after school activities and into a bunch of summer camps. And they're having this kind of internal struggle, around this social pressure of, we got to get our kids into activities, and we've got to get them doing the things, and they need the leg up and the tutoring and the activities and the sports and all the things. And the truth of the matter that their kids maybe were happier when they had downtime. The kids were maybe better behaved when they were less overscheduled. And figuring out how to balance that is, I think, a big concern for parents right now. Like,
And
how to
that's
do that
something.
intentionally. Sorry.
No. I apologize. And that's something that I talked about early on. Don't go back to normal. Like, this is like, establish your new normal and
This
stick
is the
with it.
chance. Yeah, this is our
Yes.
chance to decide with intention for ourselves. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's yeah, I really hope that we don't rush back to do those same things. I think the children will be fine. I mean, yes, certainly enroll them in activities that are going to be interesting for them and fulfilling for them, but don't feel pressure to do it just because friends are doing it or their classmates are doing it. Align it with his real vision for his life and what he's
Yeah.
interested in. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll be right back after this. You love your kids. You do your very best for them. But sometimes it feels like it's just not enough. And you're so sure you're the only one who feels this way. The truth is, you're not alone. It is also true that there are some things you're doing quite right. And there's a community who would love to exchange ideas with you. I'm Carol Maletta, creator of the Parenting 411, a portal for parents where I share information parents need through webinars and masterclasses. And not only that, The parents there support each other on this amazing journey in the Parenting 411 community group on Facebook. I can't wait to meet you in the community. And we're back with the Parenting 411.
When we come from a place of fear, when we make decisions as parents from a place of fear, it almost always leads us astray, right? It almost always leads us to a place where we don't really want to be. And so if we're putting them in, math camp because we're afraid that they're behind, but their teachers don't really think that they need to be there, maybe they'd be better served in, swim lessons or an afternoon at home with us. Um, the other thing, though, on the flip side is if you need time, like if after 2 years of them home constantly or them home a lot more than you were expecting and you need them out of the house, feel free to do that too and give yourself that gift of grace and time.
Yes.
We matter too. We matter as humans.
Right. Whatever we do, we just have to be intentional about it. Know why we're doing it.
Yeah.
So you emphasize balancing in your approach to helping parents feel more connected to their roles, I think. And so, what barriers do you find that block parents from achieving the balance that you advocate?
Yeah, yeah. So, gosh, I talk about balance in a few different areas. So, balance in terms of balancing warmth and compassion with firm and loving guidance, balancing relationships so that we're not all in our identity. So we're not all one thing. We're not all mom. We get to be a friend and a sister and a a partner too. We get to have kind of all these roles, and in all of them, the idea of balance, we think of it as something that is a point you come to that's precarious and you're there. And you're keeping all of the balls and all of the courts spinning and you're right there. And that's a kind of stressful way to look at balance. I think of balance as a verb, something that you are doing, not something that you are. It's not something that is achievable or attainable. It's something that you're always going to be making these micro corrections. If you any listeners practice yoga, they know that when they get into tree pose, they don't just sit there on their bones steady, right? There's all those little micro corrections. Your feet grip, your ankle wobbles, and then your thigh over corrects, for it. And that's just how it is. And it's like that in life too. So we might recognize, gosh, things are going really great, but I really miss my spiritual connection. I haven't been to my church group in over 2 years, and I miss my Bible study with my friends. Getting back into that can feel so good and pulls you back into balance. And then when we start doing that, we might start realizing, oh gosh, now that this is part of me is well taken care of, I can see that there's this other part of me that needs a little bit of time and attention. And then we move this way, and so it's a constant kind of moving thing that you're never done with. And it's again like what you said. It's about intention. It's about looking, slowing down, noticing, curiously asking yourself, what is it that I need in this area? How am I doing here? So when I work with clients on this or in my membership group, we have a balance wheel assessment that we go through where we talk about the areas of their life that really matter to them. We put them all in a circle and give yourself a score from 0 to 10. 0 being meaning like it's really been neglected, and 10 means you're really nailing that part of you. And when you do that, you put the marks, on the circle. It's pretty easy to see where you're out of balance. So if you're a 10 on, relationships with your partner, and you're doing really well in your career, and you're doing time good, well taking care of your body, but you're feeling, disconnected from your spiritual side, and you aren't spending as much time in nature as you used to, your wheel will look wobbly when you give a score.
That's a
So
good way to think of it. And I think of it when I talk with parents about creating harmony and that being something that you're always doing, always harmonizing and all of that. So I like that. I like that a lot. So, what are some signs for parents to know that they aren't quite keeping the balance or aren't in the balancing that they're doing right now is not quite what they need.
Yeah. My two number one things that I see parents doing or that parents report to me is getting frustrated, having a more of a hair trigger with their kids and yelling more. So losing their cool, losing their temper more with their kids over things that they wouldn't normally lose their temper over. We all have our
Hmm.
triggers as parents, but there's times when we get thrown into fight or flight a little bit more easily, and that's a clue that there's something out of whack in your life. As your nervous system is clearly stressed at that point in time. And the
Hmm.
other, kind of on the flip side of that, is parents engaging in more numbing activities, emotional
Okay.
eating, drinking, scrolling social media, doom scrolling, as the young parents call it these days, some of those things. So the numbing activities. And really, when we think about, so we all have this window of tolerance, and I love a video podcast because I can actually use my hands to teach. So we all have this window of tolerance that where we when we're in between my two hands here, I'm holding my hands parallel for those listening. We're doing well. We can handle the ups and downs of life. We can handle things with grace. We might get frustrated, but we're capable of emotional regulation. On the top end, when something triggers us or when our window is really narrow,
Hmm.
because we're stressed or unbalanced, we might be more reactive. That's the top end, or we might be more inclined to that freeze response, that numbing response that's down
Hmm.
below.
Hmm.
And those are, I mean, the answer then is to widen your window, right? So
Hmm.
when you're noticing that, and that's what all the balance activities, all the self-care activities that we talk about, that's what they do. That's what real self-care is carefully attuning to where you are in your nervous system, where your window is, and actively intentionally seeking to widen that window. Um,
Well, yes, and that was the next area I was going to ask you to talk about, self care and how that fits into the balancing act.
Yeah, so self-care is absolutely critical, and
Hmm.
not in the way that we get talked, like it gets told to us about, in terms of, um, self-care for moms. We get told to go to the manicure and go out to brunch with our friends, and yes, there's room for those things.
Hmm.
Having some deep heartfelt conversation with a person you care about is so soothing to the nervous system. So yes, those things are there, but taking a really careful look at what feels grounding to me, what
Hmm.
helps me feel safe, what helps me feel soothed, what helps me feel nourished. And that's what self-care is. It's not something that is frivolous. So I like to teach creating a self-care menu for yourself,
Hmm.
where, if you look at a menu, there's appetizers that are
Hmm.
small that tide you over to the next, really nourishing meal. There's tapas that are shareables, like going out to brunch with your friends, or going for a walk as a family is my favorite tapas level self-care. And then there's the entrees, the main courses that are really deeply nourishing for you. So dance class and yoga for me are two big ones. Um,
Hmm.
uh, Finding time to paint or read for pleasure, not parenting books. Those types of things are really good for me, good for my soul, good for my body. Really nice, warm Epsom salt baths are really good for me. So figuring
Hmm.
out what those things are that are those deeply nourishing things that you need to have on a regular basis. And then there's the desserts, the desserts that are the things that are not going to nourish you necessarily, but are about pleasure, like a manicure, if that brings you pleasure, or going to the grocery store and finding a bouquet of flowers that it just brings you some visual pleasure in your home.
Hmm.
Those types of things. And so having that menu written down of your appetizer self-care, your tapas, your shareables, your main courses, and your desserts can be really helpful so that you have a list of things that
Hmm.
are deeply nourishing to you as an individual, not a Pinterest list, or a carousel on Instagram of things that are nourishing to other people, but things that are good for you, and then
Hmm.
engaging in them. Um,
Hmm.
And I mean, some of those things include things like therapy. Therapy for a lot of us should be on our entree list, on our self care
Mm-hmm.
menu. Other things like energy work or tapping, EFT tapping, which is really good for the nervous system and evidence based. EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Technique. It's a way you can tap on acupressure points on your face and your body
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
is very soothing to the nervous system. The thing that's all the rage right now is having cold showers, having like at the end of
Oh.
the shower doing a cold rinse, which can be toning to the vagus nerve. So if you're thinking about, we were talking about this window, if you're activated, if you are stressed, feeling overwhelmed in that kind of fight, the yelling part, you need to soothe your nervous system. So the warm baths, the massage, the yoga, soothing it. If you're down in the numbing where you find yourself doom scrolling or eating a lot, if you're in that numbing part,
Mm-hmm.
or you can't concentrate, there's brain fog, you need the activating stuff, which is when the cold showers can be helpful to kind of get you back into that harmony zone.
That's the first time I have not heard about the cold showers,
Oh my
actually.
gosh, the young TikTokers are all about the cold showers. It's something I used to do when I was in college because I have curly hair and a cold rinse helps them. I can't do it anymore because I mean I tend more towards the activated stress side of things. It's hard for me to do the cold rinses, but yeah, no,
Maybe
the
that's what it is because, yes, I need a warm shower, but
Mhm. Yeah, and having that like the warm stream right on the back of your neck and the base of
Mhm.
your skull, where
Mhm.
where the primal part of your brain is, your bodies love that, especially if we're stressed. It feels really
Okay.
good to our nervous systems.
Wow. Now, how does your work with other parents impact how you parent?
Oh my gosh, it's such a blessing, Carol. I don't know if you found this in your work, but you know, the parents I work with and the families I work with are so inspiring. They're doing such hard work. They're changing their families. They're in I call them inflection point families where the trajectory of their family line, their family history is changing with them. I think they're amazing. You know, that happened in my family one generation ago. My parents were both hit by their parents. The corporal punishment was used frequently, and they made the decision not to do that. There were a couple times where life and trauma got the better of them, and that did happen. But lots of the families I work with are moving away from spanking. They're the ones who've made the decision not to do that anymore. And I think they're just so amazing. But in my work, I get to keep child development and family relationships kind of top of mind. I talk about the theories, I get to teach about kind of why your child is doing what they're doing. And it helps me remember the truth that most kids are doing the very best that they can, and if they're having a hard time or misbehaving, it's because they're overwhelmed and they're new to this world, and that they need grace and compassion and dignity. And when I teach that all day every day to others, it's much easier to remember that myself with my own kids. um,
Yes, the same. I felt the same way. You really have to practice what you're preaching. And, you just have to remember you just talked about being
yeah.
patient and really sitting down with your child and trying to understand. And so you can't now shut your own child down
Yeah.
or drag him to something when you haven't really listened to him about what
Yeah.
his objections are or what his concerns are, real valid concerns. So it definitely helped. I mean, and oddly enough, I really didn't want to start teaching parenting classes. I started with a nonprofit organization where I took parenting classes when my sons were toddlers. And so I took a couple of classes and then they asked if I would like to join leadership. And I was like, well, no. I mean, they're 2 years old and I'm learning. I see a lot more classes in your catalog that I want to take. So, no, like I haven't mastered this, yet. And so, they assured me you can continue to take classes and you can also be a leader to help other parents. And it will. not only will you be helping others, it will help your family as well. And so I gave it a shot. And
I'm
so
so
they,
glad that you did, that you were brave. That's so great. I think learning through teaching is one of the best things you can be doing.
hmm
So in
hmm
my in the membership group that I have, I really put a lot of expectations on my more advanced or seasoned parents with the new ones. I expect them to be having a go at answering a question before I do, because that mentorship model, that learning while doing, teaching
hmm
while learning, I think is one of the best ways to learn something like this,
hmm
because in parenting, we can have all the theory we want, right? It's
hmm
very different when it's in action in front of you with your kid who you love, who's a part of you, and who you're
hmm
attempting to parent consciously and respectfully. It's so different than,
Yes.
so much harder to do than to know. There's a difference
hmm
between the knowing and the doing, and the doing is always so much harder than the knowing.
Absolutely. And what are some strategies you would, just quick strategies that you could recommend to parents to start trying to bring some balance into their lives?
Yes. Okay. First of all, first and foremost, meeting basic needs first.
hmm
Understanding that you are a human being
hmm
who has basic needs. You have a body that needs nourishing movement and, joyful movement. You have a body who needs nourishing foods. You have a body who needs water. You have a human
hmm
body who needs sleep, and safety. And it's okay to have those needs. It's not even okay. Like, it's not a moral failing to have needs. It's just a simple fact. We're humans. We have needs. And I think that oftentimes parents start feeling resentful of their kids or overwhelmed by their kids or by their parenting role when they start prioritizing kids or partners or everyone else's higher order needs for creativity, for self fulfillment, kind of those higher order needs over their own basic needs. I'm picturing in my mind a mom who hasn't eaten all day because she's been so busy. You know, like one kid wanted the blue plate and one kid wanted the red plate, but the red plate was in the dishwasher. And so now it's got to be washed by hand so they can get the snack. And really, the whole family would be better served by that mom saying, I'm happy to get your red plate, but I need some food in my belly. And sitting down, eating an apple with some peanut butter or something, and then washing the plate if she still has that energy for it. Or setting a
hmm
healthy boundary if that's what is working for her, that what she needs to do to prioritize herself and her well being. And saying, I know you really, really want that red plate and it's dirty, and I'm not able to wash it right now. Oh, my love, that's hard. I know. You really wanted the red plate. Come sit with me. You want to share
hmm
my apple? You can sit right here and eat off of my plate and eat together where they share,
hmm
but
hmm
giving yourself permission to prioritize those your needs, your basic human needs, when your child's basic human needs are met. Of course, there will be times where your child's basic human needs will have to come first. That's just the reality
hmm
of raising a tiny human. If they're really hungry, we might have to put our needs to the side for a moment in time. But the
hmm
need for the red plate is a creative need, and that's a higher order need. They don't,
hmm
and we don't have to subvert our basic needs for those higher order needs. I don't know, is that
I
making
like
sense?
that. That absolutely makes sense.
So
It
that's the
definitely
biggest
does.
one, is meeting your basic human needs, giving yourself permission to have basic human needs, and then working together with your kids, with your partner if you have one, with other caregivers to get them met.
That's great. That's great. So I really enjoyed talking with you. I want to know how our listeners can follow you and get in touch with you.
Oh yeah, that would be so great. I'd love to have them come over and check out my podcast, The Balanced Parent. We cover a range of topics, everything related, from parenting, conscious parenting, and respectful parenting is mostly what we focus on, all the way through couple relationships and marriage, partnerships, and then taking really good care of ourselves. We talk about the inner work of conscious parenting, which is a lot, So we kind of run the range. It's kind of a catch-all podcast for parents who want to be more balanced in their lives and kind of in all of those areas.
Hmm.
Yeah, so the Balanced Parent Podcast, it's on any podcast platform. And then I also hang out a lot on Instagram these days at Laura Froyen, PhD.
Okay.
So they all, come and join me. I make silly reels where I look like a total nerd and don't care, and it's fun.
And so, do you have any programs, anything coming up? What's next?
Yeah, so I have a few courses that are always open and available to folks. My kind of intro course is called Respectful Parenting 101, and it's the very basic. So it's a good place to start if you're looking to make some shifts away from using rewards and punishments and timeouts or spankings and moving into more collaborative parenting. I also, I'm a former play therapist, so I have a couple courses about on play. Yeah, which is fun. So there's one deep dive course where I teach you basically how to do play therapy or use play therapy like skills with your kids. And then there's a lighter bingeable course that you can watch in a weekend that teaches you how to do things like when your child is nervous to go to the doctor to get a vaccine, or if your child has had something scary happen at school and needs some processing. And so there's those are the two options. And then I also have a course. The biggest question I get related to marriage and couples right now is how do I get my partner on board, or how my partner and I are so different in parenting. And so I have a course called Partners in Parenting that teaches parents not how to convince the other, but how to accept the other and
Hmm.
communicate with each other more constructively and consciously and compassionately. Because we don't actually have to be exactly the same as our partners. we
Absolutely. And I think that can really be interesting. I mean, you don't have to go out of your way to be different, but the fact is you do come into your marriage and to or your relationship and your parenting partnership with different experiences, different perspectives, and there are ways to really leverage that. And we have to recognize too that our children are forming a unique relationship with
Yes.
each of us. And as long as you agree on the overarching goals or overarching values, how you get there should be, flexible as long as it's respectful and intentional for the child. We'll be right back after this. As the saying goes, mother's work is never done, except when it really is. I'm talking about my new book, Mother's Work: Pearls of Wisdom and Gems from My Journey. I share my transformation from an outmanned, overwhelmed mom of twin boys to a parenting strategist and consultant, and being honored as DC Mother of the Year by American Mothers Incorporated. In Mother's Work, I tell you about the 7 guideposts that kept me anchored as I weathered the peaks and valleys of motherhood. Grab your copy at carolmaletta.com/motherswork. And we're back with the Parenting 411.
That's exactly what this course teaches. We start out with creating a family values and creating a family mission statement, and then moving into, okay, so when we do disagree, how do we do this in a way that feels connecting instead of disconnecting? Yeah, it's good.
Absolutely.
It's good stuff. Woo.
I know, I know. I really love doing it and love seeing parents seeing the light bulb go off when they get the idea, particularly when they may have been resistant at first in terms of, well, this won't work in my family. I won't be able to do this with my child. And then seeing that it can work, especially if they are relating to their child. I mean, it doesn't have to be exactly the language that I suggest or the example that I use, but they can make it work in their family based on the context of their relationship. So I love, love, love to see that.
Me too.
So,
Aren't we
yes,
lucky? Aren't
yes,
we lucky and fortunate and blessed? I just think we
I,
are.
I definitely think so. I definitely believe so. So, thank you again for joining today. And to our listeners, please head on over to Instagram to follow Dr. Laura Froyen. I believe she said Dr. Laura Froyen, PhD, on Instagram, and catch her videos and her, and maybe I don't know if you're on TikTok, but catch
I'm ter-
her.
I'm terrible on TikTok. I do have a TikTok account, but it's not very active.
Same with me.
I stay on Instagram and do reels more often than not.
Oh, okay. And so, for our listeners, thank you again for tuning in. Remember, this month we're wrapping it up, but we've been celebrating the first year anniversary of the release of my book, Mother's Work, Pearls of Wisdom and Gems from My Journey. If you want to learn more about it, head on over to carolmaletta.com/mothers work. And as always, follow me at the Parenting 411 on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And also join my community on Facebook, the Parenting 411 community. We'd love to have you. And as always, remember, it's never too late to be the parent that you want to be. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.